And now time for another multicast. We've got Turn and I squaring off against some dwarves and empire, or dwarves? Dwarves and dwarves? Dwarves and dwarves. So kind of a contrast to the army we were doing earlier. I've got some wood elves on my end. Turn went with some Bretonnian. So it should be a pretty interesting fight. Like I was saying, a contrast to the one we did a couple days back, where it was us being the dwarves versus Bretonnian and greenskins. Instead, we have wood elves, a different shade of green. But I went with a solid center line of wildwood rangers and eternal guards with shields. I know typically you don't really want to use the shields because I think these are only, this is a silver shield, so that's not too bad. But I wanted something that was going to be anti-armor that the eternal guard has, as well as the wildwood rangers being anti-armor as well. Both of them are more anti-large, which is not going to be very beneficial against dwarves, but I didn't really want to take the spear glaive women, whatever the hell. Definitely have a spell singer of life, and we have Mel Gibson all hooved up over here. He's going to be launching some death spears across the land, and I went with definitely some Glade Guard as well. Nothing special on these guys, no special shafts or anything. I think next time I'll do some Way Watchers, but we can already see the Glade Guard starting to suffer some damage from their artillery being launched across the land. We did another little side contingent of Wild Riders, and I wanted to grief Turn, so I brought Hawk Riders. They're always kind of a pain in the ass for him, so that's why I wanted to bring him for sure. But his army consists mainly of foot squires. As we've discussed, is very, very strong against dwarves because they're anti-infantry and AP. And he's got some peasant bowmen in the back row, the Fey Enchantress as his lord, and he's got some cavalry over here on the side of him with the questing knights, which are very strong against dwarves, and probably arguably the best cavalry in the game at the same time, but their AP is really going to be awesome against them. And he's got some peasant mobs, I think one or two of these little guys. They're going to help kind of hold the line. His questing knight's kind of making an attempt for the back. And he also took some Royal Hippogriff Knights, which I completely forgot about. But let's just kind of see how this stacks up. Our opponent has a very weird placement, a very, very weird placement. Rather than kind of turtling up in one area and attacking in a standard line, he's got a Grudge Thrower all the way in the front here, with Thunderers in the front as well, backed up by his Miners and Miners with Blasting Charges. He's got one Lord. I don't think they have the special Lord at all. Maybe the opposing team does. I think he's got Angrund. No, just a Thane. Oh, a Belagar Ironheimer. Okay, there we go. So Belagar, but yeah, just a standard Dwarf Lord over here. Nothing too crazy. They've got some Quarrelers in the way, way, way back. Another Grudge Thrower, another Grudge Thrower. More Quarrelers back here. Some more Miners with Blasting Charges. More Miners again. So again, a very weird setup. Everything seems to be kind of done with like a Miners and Miners with Blasting Charges right behind them for my direct opponent, the Dwarves. I think some Gyrocopters doing some flanking action here towards what I'm using to do flanking action with. But hopefully those my Hawk Riders will stand useful against those Gyrocopters. And this dwarf army a little bit more standard, a little bit more conventional, I guess you could say. A lot of long beards in the front here with some dwarf warriors. Interestingly enough, there's none of the warriors of renown here, so I'm thinking, units of renown. So I'm thinking that maybe that this opponent doesn't have those, but just some standard cannons in the back as well, and some thunderers here and here and here and here, and then some more cannons, and I believe another little flanking army over here. So yeah, some great weapon dwarf warriors rather than longbeards. Again, a very interesting composition all around for our opponents. But let's just kind of see how this plays out. Got some Thunderers already kind of pouring it on to the foot squires on that end. And here's where, of course, the High Elves or the Wood Elves really shine, is that range damage. Already starting to pick away at these Grudge Throwers very quickly. Always gotta love like the fantasy sound of arrows in every movie, like when you watch Lord of the Rings. always so damn cool. But then when you play the game and you play like any kind of range character, it's like, oh, it's fucking dead. Cool, great. Ah, the mighty charge of the dwarves. Oh yeah, oh yeah. This is iconic. The War of the Beard right here. Elves and dwarves. Who shall win? Right before the clash. It's getting there. It's almost there. Oh! I expected like a Lord of the Rings-esque kind of swing up like in Fellowship of the Ring. Definitely should have charged into them rather than just run into them. I do not think I made a charge move against them, hence why they just kind of crashed against boringly. But already getting some blasting charges thrown onto my my Eternal Guard here. I dropped Orion's mighty hail of arrows onto those Grudge Thors to make them break. Let's get this to slow down a bit because I wanted to show the the Hawk Riders are already just failing to live up to their name. This is just so bad. I thought it was going to be a much different engagement with them. But they failed miserably to the gyrocopters. And this is where things kind of get a little dicey. So I've got my range units all the way back here. And as we've discussed, what makes Wood Elves so strong is their range units. As we'll kind of talk about in a later video with the High Elves and the Dark Elves, kind of have the nice ability to be a bit of more of a toolkit army. They're more like Empire in the tabletop in the sense that they can play anything. Wood Elves mainly have to focus on range. They don't have very strong infantry. They don't have very strong cavalry. They have very special cavalry and very special infantry, but again, not very strong overall. Definitely going to be relying on that range. But my front line has now extended so far out of place and so far beyond my range, it's hard for me to really reap the benefit of having a Wood Elf army. So, big error on my part. Let's see how that kind of plays out for me. Cannon just scoring through my guys here. Look at that. Holy crap. Just one after another. Oh, yeah. Boom! Concussion wave of doom. Bruce Willis wouldn't even be able to survive that thing. Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Oh, man. But let's take a look at how Turn's army's doing over here. Already gotten some routing on his foot squires, but that's not too big of a worry. He seems to have a very strong front line. The Fey Enchantress bolstering his units, I'm sure, pretty soon. Their Thane just kind of popped in here. Pretty, again, it's a really weird choice of character. I would have chosen a Rune Lord, but or Rune Smith. Rune Lord is only in the actual Lord, not the actual hero. But good engagement right here with the Foot Squires and these Thunderers, because these Thunderers were going to keep pouring it on. We were talking about the placement of Thunderers, but this stacked placement right there is going to hinder them from really firing their full to their full abilities. But the Peasant Mob did a really good job of kind of drawing out these great weapons and locking them down, because the Peasant Mob is a pretty expendable unit. Who really cares if it loses out, as long as it's kind of locking down a unit for you. And where are his Questing Knights? Ah, there they are. And the Questing Knights coming to the back and cutting up those cannons to silence those so they stop firing on his army. And you've got the Hippogriff Knights in the back here taking off after harassing his cannons. On my side, we've got some Wild Riders really starting to do some havoc in the back lines here. I really like the way they performed this match. I'm not too thrilled with the way my front line was handled, as you'll begin to see. I mean, I threw a Shield of Thorns on them for no real reason, but I knew that they were getting shot to bits, so I figured I had to get some support their way. Again, see, really far out of placement. My range is still dragging ass back here. And I started to target the gyrocopters because I didn't want them to start melting my army in half right here and here. Ooh. Really just... things aren't going too well for me. And the Wild Riders again, though, really harassing that back line, keeping a lot of pressure on things, making sure to kind of lock down some of that engagement. Got his Dwarf Lord and my Lord kind of squaring off here. There's Belagar on their end. Yeah, there's Belagar. Who's squared up against those foot squires. Finally, my Eternal Guard kind of get into the fray here with a little hammer and anvil approach, but they're already starting to really suffer. These blasting charges being launched into them. Mostly everything I've got is starting to either flee or at negative 20%, as it seems like unit strength wise. But ranged units still almost at full strength, starting to pluck away at these gyrocopters. Again, pretty upset with their placement. Should have really been a lot more mindful of that. And I really should have been using the Spellsinger's abilities a little bit more. I mean, I was healing way later into the engagement than I should have. So, okay, now we've got regrowth going on. You know, that should have been a much earlier occurrence. But see, it looks like Turin's opponent started to really buckle here in the back. His questing knights starting to really tear up their army. He brought in some aid for me because mine was starting to really kind of crumple. And the balance of power is starting to really shift in our favor. His units that have fled are starting to come back. I'm sorry, that's their Thane who's fleeing, but I believe, yeah, my direct guy. Oh, there it is. I was looking for his Lord. So their Lord is definitely kind of trying to put it to Orion, and Orion just went from like damn near full health to half. So he's definitely sustaining some heavy damage from all the targets on him. He's got these miners coming at him. Can't recall where my riders went, which is telling in and of itself. I should have had a little bit more presence on them, because if the riders were doing a better job. Definitely left some units out there. It's really easy to lose track of your units when they flee, to just completely forget them. But always be trying to take a glance down at your unit cards to make sure everything is engaged, because you can have units like this which are not doing anything. They could have been helping me out in one way or another, engaging this Lord, helping out with these miners, anything, but instead they weren't, and I realized it a little, not too late, but longer than I should have. Make sure that all your units are constantly engaged, and that's something that I'm definitely kind of getting a grasp on more and more as I play. But still got some miners with blasting charges over here, which are going to wreak some havoc. Oh man, look at that. And I'm not a huge fan of blasting charges. I think they're kind of rubbish, but these were used pretty effectively to keep me in a front line to just get swung on. Oh, the charge of the gyrocopters. The last charge of the Ents. Getting those gyrocopters. The damsel again should have been casting a little bit more, but I think at this point, Winds of Magic was definitely out for me. Turin's mopping up pretty clean over here. Balance of power is definitely shifting more and more in our favor, and I think it's more because of the amount of damage that he's able to do. The Fey Enchantress helping to knock out these Longbeards. Drelbrelock's still in full strength. His Belagar's still up and running, but that's going to be silenced here pretty soon. We got those questing nets coming in to help me with this Dwarf Lord, because Orion's just about dead. Mel Gibson, look at him. Freedom! Victory's definitely in our grasp. Not for me so much, but overall, you can see that the armies have all pretty much routed. We have kind of tattered units left, squaring off against lords. Like the Fey Enchantress coming in here to help knock out Belagar. His entire army surrounding that. This Thane about to be undone by the Hippogriff Knights. They're just awesome units. I love those things. Hippogriffs in the tabletop are really cool too. And then my Orion somehow lived through that. But as you can see, definitely did a poor job of micromanaging and keeping the Wood Elves where they needed to be, so that they could take advantage of the fact that, you know, it is a predominantly ranged army, so it should be with its ranged counterpart to benefit as from an infantry standpoint. But let's kind of see how everyone stacked up. Definitely interested to see how, yeah, so definitely interested to see how those Wild Riders did, and they did really damn well. So 83 and 119 kills, did a really good job of harassing that back line. And the Glade Guard, which should have been at a much higher kill rate, were only 9, 15, and 17. And that's, I think, because they were spending majority of their time killing their gyrocopters more than anything. Definitely got a lot of use out of this one in specific, Wildwood Rangers. They kind of chewed up some dwarves there. And the Eternal Guard really held their own for the most part. But definitely think that these units all would have gotten more kills had they been in more range of the Glade Guard to support them. So I'm pretty bummed about that, but you know, we'll live and learn new things here. But Hawk Riders really brought it. They really showed me the meaning of haste by fleeing as fast as they could. And then my direct opponent, okay, so I guess the blasting charges didn't do as many kills as I thought, but I definitely thought that they were just like eating away at my army. Only 30. I mean, between all of them, they really only did what, 48 total points, or what do we see here? 41, 47 total kills. So not really that impressive. This Grudge Thor definitely did the majority of damage in his entire army, but I felt like his army was doing way more damage to me than it was. But it's that all of his units were doing little bits of damage here and there that it was able to really chip away at me. So let's see the stack up with Turin's army. Peasant mobs, now I don't think they did as well kill-wise, but I don't think that was their point. I think their point was to engage and lock down units to either protect flanks or to pull things out of placement. I think they did a really good job at that, as we saw, because the peasant mobs were able to charge their great weapons, their dwarf warriors with great weapons, and allow them to kind of get hit hard by those questing knights, who did 130 and 152 kills each. That is, or not each, but separately. That's pretty damn awesome. And those foot squires as well, doing their job to really kind of clean up some of the heavier armored dwarf. Keep in mind, again, they've got that AP, they do that damage. And taking a look at Clan Angrund here, lot of kills from those cannons. Those spread out artillery did allow for them to constantly be, one artillery piece to be firing pretty much the entire match, just because it would have been hard to knock out all three at once where they're in a line in the back. So that definitely good placement on those, and definitely I think that this dwarf player had a little bit better of placement in general and composition. Interesting choice with some of his things, but I still think that it worked out well for him, because we definitely brought a lot of units. And I mean, if you look at it, 600, I brought 600 and 437 of mine died, but Turin brought 1200 and a little over half of his died. So you can definitely see that I had a pretty poor placement against a pretty poorly placed dwarf player, and both of us kind of suffered from that. Him being 800 and 732 of them lost. But that's to be expected when you lose. But thanks for joining us here, guys. We should have some more videos coming out this week. Again, Lorehammer, anything like that. We should be doing a collaborative video, Turin and I, where we kind of talk about what we think is going to happen in the expansion as far as races go. Nothing really based in fact, just kind of like we've been saying, baseless, but still pretty fun nonetheless. Him being from his knowledge of Total Warhammer and my knowledge coming from the tabletop and what I know is in the Southlands, which is where I think this is going to be. But don't forget to subscribe. We'll have a link to Turin's channel in the comments, and be on the lookout for more content. Thanks, guys, and have a good one.